to the Metal Command Podcast.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Metal Command Podcast. Tony here with you, and today I'm here to talk about Warcurse's brand new album entitled Confession, and it just came out October 20th, 2023. An absolutely amazing record. My pre-order pack just showed up today, and of course, we have the t-shirt that came with that pre-order pack as well. So really excited to bring this album to you. So I'm going to talk about the album, what I think of it. Many of you saw an earlier video where I gave some initial thoughts on the album along with the new Iron Savior album as well. And I also did an interview with guitar player Justin Roth, one of the guitar players in Warcurse, and we talked about a lot of really cool stuff as well. So I'm going to touch on that. I'm going to touch on the songs that I love the most off of this album, and I'm going to talk about the production of the album, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. And at the end of this podcast and review, I'm going to talk about the vinyl record. So and as you can see, it's still sealed. Now, why is that significant? Well, it's very significant from the standpoint that they did this off of Eco Vinyl. So for those of you that don't know what Eco Vinyl is, you see it says right here on the wrapping, Eco Recycled Vinyl, Eco Mix. So in other words, what that means is all of the plastic that was not used to make other vinyl albums out there, all of that plastic, they kind of throw it in a pile at random. And what they do if they want to make vinyl records out of it is they recycle it and you make records out of it instead of letting it go to waste. So you don't know what color your vinyl record is going to be. You just don't know. And I don't know. And I'm going to reveal what color that I have at the end of this podcast. So anyhow, let's talk about the new Warcurse album. So if you watched one of the previous podcasts where I've talked about this record, they had an album that came out previously called Eradication. In my opinion, this album blows it away. And I have very rarely ever seen a band make as huge of a jump in quality as these guys have. And when I say quality, I'm talking about the quality of the songs, the production, the cover. Everything about this record, in my opinion, is a lot better than the previous album and the one before that. I mean, it's a huge increase in quality, and I absolutely love this disc. When I first heard it, and again, I've had a long time to listen to this album. In fact, I have been listening to the entire thing probably a little bit longer than most people have in the media. I was given permission to check the record out. And so I've been listening to it for a long time, probably a couple of months now. Maybe the beginning of September. I don't remember exactly, but it's been a while, right? It's been almost 2 months. But I think this album is absolutely phenomenal. It has a lot of thrash elements in it, and like from the previous album, but it just has better songs overall. So you guys saw a video for Miracle Broker, which of course is on YouTube. You can check that single out. A song called The Convoy, which is a phenomenal track. Probably, of the singles they released, probably the best single they have put out. And The Convoy kind of reminds me of, and there's quotes from Justin online about this, but it almost reminds me of what government does to people. So like, for example, the truckers in Canada that were protesting. If you look at what the Canadian government did to them, obviously it's about stuff like that and government overreach and things of that nature. So, but it's a great record. It really is. So I'm going to let me talk first about my favorite songs off of the album. There's a song called Illusion of Choice that is phenomenal. And let me just tell you right now, there isn't a bad song on this record. There isn't. Some stand out to me a little bit more than others, but there is not a bad song on this album. One of the cool things is they did a gripping cover of the song Rusty Nail. And that is off of the Nemesis album, I believe. And Great cover. It was actually funny because I didn't notice it on the track listing, and then when I was listening to the song, I'm like, wait a minute, I've heard this before. And I think that's cool, and I'm in the minority here. I know some people will disagree with me or agree with me, but I like Grip Inc. better than Slayer. It's always been like that. I think Grip Inc. is still the best project, the best band Dave Lombardo ever played in. But there's a lot of really cool tracks on here. Obviously, I talked about The Convoy earlier, but the two songs that really stand out the most for me, personally, it's a song called Fortress of Agony, and of course, my favorite song off of the album, Power of the Powerless. So I'm going to go back to a couple of excerpts where I interviewed Justin not long ago, and he talks about the song Fortress of Agony, which I think, and here's the thing, before I go to those interview clips, I will say that this album for me is a 10 out of 10. I think it's a top 10 album for me this year. I think it's great. It's a 10 out of 10. But I will say, and I said this in one of the prior videos, one of the prior podcasts, I might say, is I give the lyrics an 11 out of 10. There is a lot of great lyrical content on this album. And that is probably one of the biggest reasons I love the album. But the songs like Fortress of Agony, for example, really hit home about the realities of what some things what people go through, and obviously it's about the evils of sex trafficking. So here you go. Check out this interview clip with Justin Roth. He talks about that very song itself.
Fortress of Agony was a very important song to me. I wrote that song about like children being sex trafficked. I don't think that's a deep, powerful, kind of almost emotional sort of song to write. You got to go to a dark place and put yourself in the shoes of the victim, and it's hard to write.
And that, of course, is Justin talking about the song Fortress of Agony. And there are a lot of reality-based lyrics on this album, and a lot of very brutally honest stuff portrayed in the lyrics. Now, that, again, as I said, is one of the biggest reasons I love this album. And probably the biggest reason I love this album is the next song I'm going to talk about, Power of the Powerless. And I am going to allow Justin to tell you what that song is about, and then I'm going to give you some information about the topic we discussed when it comes to what he actually wrote this song about and who he wrote it about. Check it out.
Power of the Powerless. I don't think you figured it out. I think we just talked about it off air. Mm-hmm. But that song, kind of about the underdog or the little man getting screwed. The working title of that song was Killdozer, and we wrote that song about Marv Heemeyer. Yeah, the guy that famously built the bulldozer, the Killdozer, and got his revenge. So yep. I mean, I had fun with some of the songs.
Now, obviously, you saw what Justin talked about. He talked about the Killdozer built by Marvin Heemeyer. So for those of you that don't know what this is, the Killdozer was a giant bulldozer that a guy in Granby, Colorado built to get revenge over him getting screwed over politically. At least in his mind, he was. Essentially, he was an armed forces veteran. He had opened up a muffler shop in this small town and fought a lot of legal and political battles against, the mayor, I guess, of this town and, the city council, whatever happened. The story, if you really want to know the whole story behind it, there is a documentary called Tread, Tread. It's on various streaming platforms. It gives you the entire story in detail. But essentially, this guy went crazy. So what he did, he closed up his business after, getting screwed over by whoever he felt he was screwed over by in the town. And what he had done is he had bought a gigantic construction bulldozer. And while he was in his old shop or whatever he was doing, he was living in there. And he would construct this thing at night to get his revenge. And what did he construct? He built a giant armored steel shell around the bulldozer And then what he did is he had a series of cameras recessed into the steel itself, like windows with cameras in them, and he was actually steering it using TV screens from these cameras. And then what he did is he got in this bulldozer and he drove throughout the town and smashed 13 buildings owned by the people that he felt that he was screwed over by, and went absolutely berserk. Before, obviously, this bulldozer ended up having the coolant lines rupture on it, and he actually ended up offing himself, inside of it. But he had like a 50 caliber rifle in the back of this thing. I mean, it was crazy what this dude did. But if you watch that documentary, it's called Tread. And again, lyrically, this is one of the reasons I love this album, because a lot of people might have forgotten about the Killdozer. I never did. But the fact that a band went and wrote a song about this is amazing. Now, I've always felt, and I'd never asked, I had never gone and went and, I guess, posed this question to Gary Holt, but I always thought that Exodus probably might have written Shovel-Headed Kill Machine after the Killdozer. But, I don't see anything or remember seeing anything about that. But I always thought of the Killdozer when I saw the cover of that album. But Warcurse goes and they write a song about the Killdozer, which I think is freaking awesome, right? So again, well-produced songs. They have some thrash elements in it, and so it's just a great heavy metal album. Let's put it that way. How much of the thrash elements are in this album compared to the Eradication album? You still have quite a bit of it in there. The songs are a little bit more refined, and just absolutely a brilliant album songwriting wise. Now let's talk about the production. I'm going to make this kind of brief because I'm going to get into revealing the color of the vinyl that I ended up getting. The production was phenomenal. It was done by a guy named Neil at Amish Electric Chair Studios. And one of the things that I love about the fact they went to a guy like Neil, number one, he's talented. He helped make this album sound great. But the other thing that I love about this is that they didn't do it like every other heavy metal band does. They didn't go to the same producer. They weren't one of like the 50 bands using Andy Sneap. They weren't one of like 50 bands using Jacob Hansen, or somebody like that. They went and found somebody that really wasn't a producer that a lot of metal bands are going to, at least that I know of anyway. And they found a very talented guy in Neil at Amish Electric Chair Studios. They really did. He helped make this album sound phenomenal. And something that I've thought about, if you notice, certain bands work really well with certain producers, okay? For example, Martin Birch with Iron Maiden for a number of years, right? He worked with Iron Maiden, for 12, almost 12 years, something like that, and helping them, produce their records, some of the most legendary stuff they've ever done. Halloween with Charlie Bauerfeind, Roy Z with Bruce Dickinson, Dennis Ward with the band Firewind. I mean, the list can go on and on. And as somebody that's a music fan, and with the jump in quality of this record, right? Yeah, the band wrote better songs, but they found a guy to really bring those songs to life. And I've always been a fan of bands who work really well with one guy, right? Like Judas Priest, if you think of Judas Priest, for example, they started putting great albums out again when Tom Allen got involved with them again, and they ended up getting Andy Sneap. Now, Andy Sneap does a lot of thrash metal, but he doesn't do a lot of classic metal bands, right? But that partnership is something that's obviously going to continue because it works really well. Well, folks, I think the partnership between Neil and this band, Warcurse, I think it works really well, and I would love to see them continue to work with him for the next album. And let me tell you why. Number one, when you find a guy that really dials in the sound of an album and you love it and it sounds great and it works well and it's well received, you want to work with that person again, number one. Number two, when you work with that person again, number one, that producer, that sound guy, he knows what the band should sound like. He knows what could have been improved from the previous release. And if you notice with certain bands, when they work with the same guy, And I'm talking about a band working with the same guy they've been, like producing and mixing a record. They tend to make improvements and they keep making great albums. And I think that's a partnership that this band should keep. I think Neil and Warcurse should continue to work together because, they've cultivated a working relationship, obviously, with how great this album sounds. And I think it would be a great continuation. I think if they continue to work together, I honestly believe that the next album will be even better than this, from the sonic perspective and, of course, the songwriting perspective. So with that being said, let's get to the last element of this podcast. And that is my Warcurse Eco Vinyl, Confession Eco Vinyl, right? What color is it going to be? So I'm going to play an interview clip with Justin Roth talking about what Eco Vinyl is to refresh your memory in case you forgot from what I told you at the beginning of the podcast. But here's Justin Roth talking about what Eco Vinyl is and how and what they used to press this album as far as what kind of vinyl record you're going to get. Check it out. One of the things I think was really cool is you're making the albums are being made out of recycled materials. Mm-hmm. So not one person is going to get the same vinyl album. It's going to all look different. I think that's actually really, really cool. Yeah. Because, most of the time, and even when you get splatter vinyls from like record labels, you can always tell there's a slight difference. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But in this case, not one vinyl record will look the same. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. So like I've seen other bands do it and I thought it was cool as shit. It is fun because like you don't know what you're gonna get. I think you probably know this, but like all the dudes in my band at one stage or another, Murphy's super into it still, but we all played disc golf. And like the actual disc golf discs, the frisbees for a lack of a better term, like everyone loves to collect those things because they're molded with plastic. Like they throw plastic chips in. It's very similar process to like pressing an album. You flash them the whole 9 yards. So those guys, they trade them. It's like an exciting thing when a disc gets released to see like who got what colors and it's a whole thing. And I thought like that's a fucking cool thing, man. And I'm like really excited to see what everybody gets when they get their Confession albums. I hope there's like people in the comments. I hope anyway, like somebody sees that one dude got like a bright orange one with some blue swirls in it or something, and the other dude got like a red one and they want to trade. I hope that shit happens because I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
kind of creates a sense of community around the product.
What I think you should do personally, what would be really awesome is when it comes out, and have people send in photos of what their album looks like and post it.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
We plan to do that, and maybe I'll collage them, or maybe I'll make some sort of thing for them. But definitely, I'm excited to see what everyone gets. I bought an Architects album on Eco Vinyl. So just so we're clear, like what the Eco Vinyl is, it's the same material. It's literally what it is. It's all the runoffs. It's any, like if they press an album, it goes into the recycle pile. When they cut the flashing, which is like cut the edges of it off, that gets thrown in the pile. It's all the cut off, runoff, defect, leftover material from making other albums. And then it all goes back in the shredder, goes back in the smasher. So yeah, but you end up with like sometimes pretty weird looking combinations. Sometimes you get colors because they just blend them together. You get colors that don't exist when you pick from like, your standard 10 or 12 colors or whatever the pressing plan offers. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I bought an Architects album a while back it was like construction cone orange, and it had like blue and green swirled in it. Looked badass. But then I saw some other dude posting, and his was like 3 shades of gray and white. It's like everybody got something so drastically different. I just thought that was really fun. So
I'm looking forward to see what mine's going to look like. That's could be like the hidden surprise. So folks, now that we know what Eco Vinyl is, and we know that it can be a completely random color, let's find out what color this is, because I've been curious. Again, it's still sealed, folks. Still sealed. Still got the plastic all around it. So let's check it out. I waited until I did this review because I wanted to reveal this to all of you. All right. We're going to find out. This is the moment of truth, folks. Will it be green? Will it be brown? Will it be blue? Who knows? Let's check it out. All right, so we have the record. Let's see. Well, this is interesting. I've seen some green copies. But this is kind of like an off... I don't know. It's kind of like an off green, brownish green color. Almost like a gold. Like a really dark gold. This is really cool. I've seen some light green. I haven't seen anything else, but if you look, take a close look, you could see like other colors kind of mixed in there. That is completely random. And I think that's really cool. So this is my this is my Warcurse Eco Vinyl pressing. This is the color. I think it's phenomenal. So that's pretty much all I have for you, folks. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you like what you saw and heard on this podcast, of course, don't forget, subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video, and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. But this is my eco-friendly vinyl pressing. Lots of really cool colors in here. Kind of like a dark goldish color. Pretty interesting. Some people I've seen light green. I've seen kind of like a brownish color so far online, but this is it. So with that said, thanks for watching. Again, check out Warcurse Confession. Definitely a contender for Album of the Year. A phenomenal release. I'll see you all soon. Stay metal.